Hello and welcome to another episode of Addicted to Business. Today we're delighted to be joined by Garry Mansell, local investor and NED. Welcome, Garry.
Hi there, good to see you.
Hello.
And I'm also delighted to be joined by my co-host, Stokely Howard.
Thank you for introducing me, Nathan.
No
I'm going
problem.
to make a point of this now.
Every time I forget to introduce them, I'm fucking up, so that's
okay.
perfect.
First time you've met, I know.
Yeah. So, Garry, thank you for joining us today. The real things we want to talk about today, essentially, we've got 45 minutes. You've gone on an incredible journey. You've bought and grown and sold a company for significant value. And I want to talk to the listeners today about how they can follow in those footsteps. So what practical insight can they take from your journey and take into their own business? Sound okay?
Okay, sounds perfect. You'll need to ask some questions along the way and
Just
stop me at times when I waffle.
45 minutes, go.
Fine. So let's start with where it all started for you, Garry. How did you get into the world of business and tell us a little bit about your journey to get to essentially today?
Okay, well, it depends how far you want to go back, but I'm actually a chemist by profession.
Okay,
That's
that's a long way back.
It's a
Really?
very long
Wow.
way back.
Okay.
And immediately I found out there was no money in chemistry at the time, so I moved away from that
Yeah.
and went into systems. I guess the longest period I spent working for somebody else was I spent 22 years working for Mars Incorporated
Okay.
in various places around the world, and ended up looking after their supply chain in Europe for their food business,
Okay.
which led me on to becoming a procurement professional, really, and looking after their buying and selling of logistics services.
Mm.
When we did that, it was back in 1992 when the single market first started, and Brexit doesn't scare me at all because I've been there already.
Yeah.
And very quickly, we started to do some clever stuff in terms of buying. We built a company inside Mars actually called Freight Traders,
Okay.
which was online procurement back in the days of the first dot-com boom. Started in 1999, and we launched that company the day when the bubble burst, quite frankly.
Right.
But it was pretty successful.
Yeah.
Rolling forward to 2006, I'd been involved with a company that had some very, very clever software in procurement that was using a technique called mathematical optimization
Okay.
to help people make decisions like human beings do.
Mm.
Long story short, I ended up basically moving Freight Traders with myself and a number of my people into this Swedish company called Trade Extensions. And from 2006 onwards, we built Trade Extensions into what was pretty much recognized as being the leading company in the world in terms of online procurement using the techniques we did. Great customer base. We were doing things with companies like Walmart and IKEA and Mars and Procter & Gamble, and they were using our software to buy everything from the lines for striping their car parks through to the cheese that you eat in Tesco, so to speak.
Yeah.
Mm.
But there comes a time in every company's life where you have to make a decision about where it needs to be.
Okay.
And that was where the journey started for the sale of Trade Extensions to an American unicorn called Cooper Software.
Okay. As in, you realised that you couldn't take it any further, or how did that?
What
kind
it
of
really
team
was,
come about?
and a good lesson really, is that when you've built a company like that, you need to both know the marketplace you're in and decide what you're going to do with it.
Mm.
Because one of the things that people struggle with is when they want to sell their company
Yeah.
or what their exit strategy is.
And the marketplace is constantly changing, isn't it? So that's the
It does
difficult
tend to.
challenge.
It does tend to. I mean, certainly in the software business, new entrants come in all the time. We were very much a new entrant, but we were a niche player. You know, we were the best at helping people procure stuff, services and goods. And what was happening is the companies that we were working with were literally now starting to say, well, we want more functionality. And you know, in the software as a service business, you're adding functionality all the time.
Yeah.
Now, we were adding lots and lots of procurement functionality, but of course people were saying, well, we want the payment piece, we want the contract piece, we want the spend analysis piece. And companies were either building that themselves or they were buying and acquiring other companies and then meshing the software together. We took the decision, quite frankly, that said it really wasn't worth us building all of the functionality to make ourselves a procurement suite or a business spend management suite.
Sure.
Okay.
And started looking at whether we should partner with people. But frankly, partnering is kind of okay, but partners only really happen when you swap shares, in my thoughts, and swap money. And so therefore I personally approached a company I knew that had what I felt was a weakness in their offering, but had massive strengths in all the things we didn't have.
Yeah.
And it became a marriage made in heaven, quite frankly.
Okay.
And that sounds wonderful, but it is like, the courting and the relationship and the marriage. You have some hellish fights along the way.
Yeah.
And eventually you reach a decision that you are going to stay together.
Yeah.
So back in a couple of years back now, we actually sold Trade Extensions to Cooper.
Okay.
And coming back to the idea of what it's really about, I know one of the questions you asked me as well when we were going to do this to talk about was when you decide to sell and how you sell.
Yeah.
For us, it was obvious. The market could eventually put us out of business because the big companies we were working with were looking for suites that did a lot more
Sure.
and weren't looking for best of breed, software as a service solutions.
Yeah. Almost convenience, I guess, as opposed
Yeah.
to best in class.
And so therefore we had to make that choice. It was time to sell. But of course, depending on who's listening to this, there are companies that will be selling for all sorts of reasons or looking to sell
It's not a
for all sorts of
one size fits
reasons.
all model, is it? And
Never.
It's different for everyone, isn't it?
It could be people are sick of their business. People want to retire.
Yeah.
They've reached the end of the road in their business. They want to sell it to the people inside their business, perhaps.
And when selling a business, you don't simply just, like an estate agent, call someone and put it on the market, right?
Oh, that's exactly how you know.
I was like, what?
It's crazy. There's a button. They click buy now.
Yeah.
And then it's amazing. Now, how does it work?
It works in many ways.
Okay.
You can find yourself being approached. I mean, we were approached several times by everything from private equity companies who were looking to do a roll-up of the market, companies who you would fit into their portfolio. So you have to make yourself attractive if you really do want to sell, and that's your exit strategy. And I always say, I act as an NED now to a number of companies and an investor. One of my first questions always is, well, where's your exit strategy? How is this all going to end for you?
Yeah.
Because
Thinking of the long term.
Yeah, if I'm spending money with you and I'm buying shares, I want to get my money back.
Yeah.
And I want you to multiply that, and I want to help you multiply that. So there are tons of ways that sales happen.
Okay.
And, it's all kind of similar, even if you're the massive guys compared to the smaller guys. There's somebody who wants you, and you want to be out. Now, there isn't
Were you
really
publicly for sale, though? Were you going around telling people, or were you actually not?
No, we were. I think everybody's for sale.
At the right price.
At the right price and at the right time. Every
Yeah.
company is for sale, as long as it's saleable.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we took a decision that said it was the right time for us. Yeah, because of the way the market was shifting and because of us having to make a business decision.
Yeah.
But it really does depend upon the individuals inside the company, whether the company and the circumstances are right. There are lots of sales that happen and multiples more that appear that they're going to happen and don't.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's one thing I would always say to people. Just because somebody's shown an interest, and even you might have agreed a price, don't assume that sale's going to complete.
Yeah.
Because very many don't.
Yeah. We own a small business, Adam and I, and we've learnt that lesson. It's like, oh yes, we've got it, but unless there's money exchanged or contract signed, that sale hasn't been made.
even down to the day of the completion.
Yeah, until the cash in.
You're waiting there, quite frankly. I mean, we were in we had a horrible situation in the fact that we were a Swedish company selling to an American company on the west coast of the States. And so therefore we had this situation of the time zones and all those things and different accounting standards and different legal situations. But literally, and it's a horrifying thing to say, that the day we were due to complete, our chairman was in our solicitor's office in Sweden, in Stockholm, and Stockholm got closed down because of a terrorist incident.
Oh gosh!
And you really are sitting there, and you really are sitting there thinking, this has been years, and now this has happened.
Yeah.
I was ready to go and kill people, quite frankly.
Leave it to me.
Yeah, I'll go and get him now. But it did complete.
Good.
So yeah, it's that there's no magic bullet, there's no magic formula.
Sure.
You can peddle yourself on the market, no doubt of that at all.
Yeah.
I always say to people, recognizing the fact that you do want to exit, you have to make yourself fit to exit. And you hear people talking, the thing is full of great phrases. People turn around and say, "Oh, you have to dress the bride," which is about as sexist as you get.
Yeah.
But you kind of get the idea that people are getting their company ready for sale.
Yeah.
And there are people who offer services that do that. And truthfully, I don't like that approach. I think if you're running a good company, you're running it well, it should pretty much be ready for sale out of the box.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes the sale go through effectively. That's when somebody's coming in and doing due diligence on your business. You shouldn't be scared about it. Your account's in order.
Yeah,
your business governance
in the closets,
is
right? It's all open.
Well, it's not only just stuff that you hide. It's about a well-run business. It's doing things like making sure that the governance and your board is right.
Yeah.
It's making sure that the board minutes are there, that people know what the jobs are, that there's a clear organisation. All the things that you really need to make a good company work well are the things you need to do to make it saleable.
And would you say that quite alarmingly, a lot of that stuff isn't in place when you go in now as your non-exec role? You're going to go,
absolutely.
Where's your board minutes? Like, this is a 101, but
it's not only that. It's let me see your accounts, and even what kind of standards your accounts are at.
Yeah.
And it's not saying people are being immoral or illegal or anything of that nature. But it is very, very easy when you have a business that's quite small to treat, for example, cash accounting. You put your money into your accounts when you get it.
Yeah.
That's not the way it works. You've got to start thinking about revenue recognition.
Yeah.
I mean, where we were a software business, for example, you can't put, you can, but you shouldn't really put your software licenses into revenue recognition. It only happens. If you're selling an annual license to somebody, you've got to account for that annual license on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
Even though the cash has come in up front, maybe, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So cash and revenue are different things, and you can't treat them as the same. But yeah, you need to make sure that your accounts are in order. It's got to be easy for a company to pick it up and use generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP principles, and go, yep, I understand this. For this market that I'm buying into, these are the standards that are followed. And it's surprising that people don't do it.
Okay, so for anyone listening, the first thing to do is to make sure the house is in order and make sure you've got some of the fundamentals in place.
Run your business well, get your house in order.
Fine. One thing I want to talk about is in the process of getting that house in order, normally it takes an external influence, right? Because a lot of the people listening and perhaps watching have almost fallen into this career. So they may have been freelancing, or they may have been working for another person and decided to set up themselves. And actually, there'll be a massive skills gap, or a knowledge gap, certainly, in terms of, okay, what is good and what does good look like? What do you encourage people to do in that situation?
Well, number one, when you're ready, good external help is always worthwhile. Yeah. And I guess I would say that. Yeah. Since I'm an NED for a few companies,
it makes sense.
And it's not really a sales.
But I mean, we say on this show all the time, right? The non-execs and consultants, no matter who it is, it's an invaluable tool to have. To even a mentor at an earlier stage.
Yeah. Things like that are good. I mean, the other thing I would say is it's very tempting for people to use bookkeepers who are not accountants. Yeah. And if you really are looking to build your business to something which is saleable, worthwhile, and easily sold, then you do need a good accountant. Yeah. They bring a lot to
almost cutting corners here in terms of cost, but forfeiting
long term.
Yeah.
It'll become a nightmare for you if you're going through due diligence and your accounts aren't that great.
Sure.
Because one thing that I would say to anybody when they come to sell their business is you've got to run it at the same time as you're trying to sell it. If a big company's coming in to buy you, they're going to be doing due diligence. If they're a public company, they will do huge amounts of due diligence on you.
Months, years?
It depends how good your company's being run.
Sure.
But it's easily months.
Okay.
And that means there are key members of your business who are going to be working every single night. You're going to be working harder than you've ever done in your life to answer the questions that they're asking, and rightly so. Yeah. Particularly, if they're a listed company, they're taking care of their shareholders, and they have a legal requirement to do that kind of work.
Absolutely.
So it isn't an easy thing. It's you've got to run your business while you're trying to sell it, and you've got to make sure that the information's kept, that you only release it at the right time, and you've got to keep your staff motivated. Yeah. Because remember, not everybody inside your company knows this company is being sold when you're selling.
I mean, that must be really difficult, right? To kind of almost, you're going to be incredibly excited. You're getting towards the end of potentially the end of your journey. And actually, you can't necessarily disclose it with all the team.
Well, people do use non-disclosure agreements in that respect, and it's done on a need to know.
Yeah.
But you really don't want that kind of thing leaking.
Absolutely right.
For all sorts of reasons, because you want to make sure that your staff are taken care of.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I was really proud of in the sale of Trade Extensions is not only did everybody come into Cooper and come in very well, a lot of them got promoted a year or so later, and I think we only actually lost one person out of the whole staff, and they left to get a bigger job somewhere else anyway.
Sure.
So you have to care for the people. They're the people who actually got you to where you are.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it comes as a surprise. It comes as a shock to people when that kind of thing happens.
Yeah.
What's this mean for me in the future? So you need as part of your selling process, you need to make sure the communication process to all of your folks inside the business is both robust, good, open, honest and truthful. Almost like all good advertising, legal, decent, honest and truthful is the way to keep it.
Yeah.
Well, your staff are your biggest asset, aren't they?
Very much so. I mean, if you look, probably 70% of our costs as a software business were people.
Yeah.
And they are still the biggest asset. That's what people are buying. Okay, they're buying the software, they're buying the accounts, they're buying the clients and everything else. But they're buying the company, and the company's the people.
Yeah.
Well, so this takes us on nicely to a lot of businesses watching and listening actually will be far too attached to the business. So they will be, and certainly for myself, as we started, it was almost a Nathan show, right? They would know me and work with me, and I would do a lot of the stuff. But actually, a good business is something that doesn't solely rely on its directors or shareholders, right? So
no, you're touching on something there. Which
here
is,
we go.
Which is another thing. If you talk about, the business is identified by you, largely. The way you act and the way you operate is the way the business operates, and people take your lead. But you can also be one of the barriers to your business as well. I mean, I see it a lot of times with founders and entrepreneurs, and I use a little thing I call the rule of twos, quite frankly.
Yeah.
When you're talking about growth. And the rule of twos is when your business gets to either 2 years old or 2 million in turnover, as a founder, you should be looking and thinking, I need to step aside. And I don't mean leave.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, let the people inside the business actually take the authority that they need to assume. Imagine it. You start with a business with maybe 4 or 5 of you. You grow it to 2 million and you employ another 20 people to get it to 2 million. So there's all these people now, and you've probably got quite a flat structure because that's the way you've run the business. Yep. There's no organisation in there because there aren't that many people. And pretty much all the major decisions in the business have to come through you or 1 or 2 founders. You're continuing to do your job. You're continuing to work, and you've only got 18 hours in the day probably, because most of us at least need 6 hours sleep. Yeah. And what tends to happen is the people who, if you don't let them make decisions, and I use the word empower, don't like it, but it kind of paraphrases what it is.
Sure.
If you don't give people permission to make decisions and support them in their decisions, and everything comes through you, you're a block, you're a barrier, and you've got people sitting around waiting for your say-so.
Yeah.
They are even queuing to have conversations with you.
Yeah.
Now, how dumb is that?
Yeah, ridiculous.
But
Ridiculously
I do see it at times where the founders are so in love with their business, they have such passion, and that's the way it should be. But they also have this massive controlling hand on its
ego,
throat.
or why is it?
I think a lot of the time people are scared.
Well, I was going to say, it's so hard to let go. And I mean, we're going through that at the moment. At the end of the day, it's while you want to be less involved, it's still your relationship and your reputation, right? And
it's your relationship, your reputation, and your clients.
It's your baby, isn't it? You've built
exactly
this
right.
thing.
But what you've got is a bunch of clients who are also watching, and you are desperate to make sure that you're taking care of your clients.
Yeah.
You have to trust the people you employ to take care of them in the same way as you.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting thing that happens. I always say to people, when you're employing, your second and third round of employees, look for the ones that are going to be running this business in 2 years' time. Don't look for the ones that does the job that you want now.
Yeah, the quick
look
fix
for that opportunity, the person who in 2 or 3 years' time will be the CEO or the marketing director or something of that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you don't, then you're going to have to bring somebody in. Yeah. If you want the business to grow and the people you've employed aren't capable of taking it on for you, then you're probably going to have to bring in this infamous phrase of professional managers. Now, professional managers are great. They really are skilled very often, and they've got great CVs. And I've seen a few examples where people have brought in a CEO who's been in the industry, great CV. They come in and the founders feel emasculated immediately.
Yeah.
Worst case is they almost try and exclude the founders and run it as their own business.
Yeah.
The founders hate it because it's changing their business, their baby, the whole thing they wanted. Yeah. I mean, there's a friend of mine who, I mean, she actually put an article, she re-released it really for Valentine's Day about how you fall in love with your business. A woman called Sahar Hashimi who built Coffee Republic with her brother.
Okay.
And she tells exactly that story, where they brought in a CEO, and the CEO, great CV, but didn't have the same passion and love for the business that her and her brother did.
Will they ever have that passion and love if they didn't start it?
I think it's unlikely.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do, but recognise what those implications are. And that rule of two is really important. Take a look at your business after 2 years and decide, what am I going to do with this now?
Yeah.
Because you could end up in a business that has huge potential and just doesn't grow because you're the barrier to it.
And that's a very difficult conversation to almost have with yourself, to realise that you who gave birth to this thing are actually now holding it back from.
Well, that's the one time you do your appraisal and you do your self appraisal and you go, take yourself to one side, have a word with yourself, guys.
Yeah.
And say, no, this is not good. It's
I guess
not
easier
working.
as a non-exec to come in because you don't have that emotion attached to it and say, look, guys, external opinion, that's what you pay me for at the end of the day. You're too close.
Yeah, I mean, I think the right thing with a non-exec, non-execs vary. In the bigger companies, non-execs operate as non-executive members of the board. Yeah. And you tend to be there for a couple of days a month. You do the reading, you look at the accounts, you maybe get attached to one or two of the bigger projects, the more significant ones, but you're there to help with the governance and the running of the business and to act as a trusted advisor to the CEO, really. Sure. A bit like being a school governor, truthfully. Yeah. In smaller businesses, non-execs tend to be more hands-on. They tend to have a more consultative role and bring the skill set of, okay, let's look at your business strategy. Let's make sure your governance is okay. Let's make sure you're employing the right people. Let's make sure your personnel policies and practices are in place. Let's make sure your shareholder agreements are right.
I mean, something that's so often overlooked, right? And let's develop that point a bit further. So let's pretend over here we have a company that's listening and watching, and you're going in as non-exec. Okay, first time you've met them. What's the first step, or what's the process that you go through? Does it follow a set formula?
Not really. The first thing you do is I spend my time first of all asking them why they wanted me. Okay. What is it that you really want from me more than anything else?
And do a lot of them always have the answer, or are they like, oh, well, I don't know, I just kind of thought.
Some of them say, well, I was told to get a non-exec, and that's where I basically buy a cup of coffee with them and kind of disappear. Others really genuinely say, well, we want to turn our business from a 2 million business to a 5 million business, and we don't really know how to do that. Or we're having a particular issue with this, and we think it should be better. Could you help us in that area?
Sure.
So it is a bit of a consultative role at times, particularly with businesses that are less than 5 million.
Okay.
You're going in and you're helping in all sorts of areas.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been involved in everything from, putting together a pay and policies practice through to, looking at a sales deck and saying, well, that's great, but guess what? It doesn't actually say what you do.
Yeah.
And it really can be that varied. And that's the beauty of it, is that, you come to both know and like the founders. And the real trick of a non-exec in a growth business or a small business which is growing is you measure your success by two things, really. The first thing is when they actually turn around to you and say, thanks for that, but we're not going to pay you anymore, go away. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think everybody should.
You've kind of ran your course.
Yeah, you should work yourself out of a job, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And the second one is where they do exit and they either then go on to start a new business or look for where their yacht's going to be bought.
Yeah.
Things of that nature.
Sure.
So, I really do believe. I mean, a guy who I'm very close to that worked with me for years, both in Mars and in Trade Extensions, he saw good in everybody, and he had an amazing capability as a manager just to turn around and say, my only job is to manage myself out of a job.
Yeah.
And he did it every single time. And he's now...
he goes in the business, gets his goals achieved,
and he gets promoted again.
Yeah.
And he's had more promotions than I've seen hot dinners, literally. And as you can tell, I've seen a lot of hot dinners. So yeah, I mean those are the things you should be doing.
So where would you say your specialisms lie now? I mean, we've touched upon governance, and actually, I believe that a lot of businesses kind of grow and rapidly grow, but actually almost leave governance behind. And I don't know if that's a lack of education or a lack of what, but before you know it, you go, ooh. And I mean, even now, we go into businesses to sell digital transformation projects and everything else, and you chat, and then you start to ask questions. You're like, oh, what do you mean you don't do that?
I think to be quite honest, it's because it's not sexy. It's pretty boring.
Yeah.
It's kind of putting the bits behind you that you have to do because everybody thinks I should do it.
Yeah.
So there is that to do around it. But I mean, asking me the question, what do I think is the strength and where do I bring most of it? It's mainly go-to-market strategies, quite frankly.
Okay.
I mean, I spent 15, 18 years in Mars being taught to be a buyer. So buying everything from, company travel and company cars through to the biggest logistics operations in Europe.
Yeah.
But then I became a salesman. And I'd been taught how to undercut salesmen, how to get the best out of salesmen, how to get the best possible deal that were mutual, but you didn't want to be in a situation that you weren't getting value for money. Yeah. And it becomes really interesting to go on the other side of the coin. And truthfully, I got challenged by a friend of mine who he was a marketeer. And I used to turn around and say, marketing, don't tell me that's a science. It really is. Yeah, I'm a scientist. I did science. I know what science is. Marketing's not a science. And so he challenged me. And he basically said, well, go and do some training in marketing and come back and tell me whether you think it's a science or not. So I went away and did it. Yeah. Just because it was a challenge. Yeah. And I came back and told him, you're right, it's not a science. It's absolutely not a science. But, what I do find I'm good at is I know how a buyer behaves. I know how trained buyers behave. I know how people behave, I guess, in terms of that negotiation. So negotiation is a strength.
So let's dive into that, because I'm conscious the people watching, listening, like, okay, that's really interesting. How do we take something practical out of that? Are there common traits you see in everybody in any buying situation that we could say always look for X and Y?
Oh,
I get.
I don't think there are common traits.
Okay. There
are common tricks that people use at various times.
Okay. Have we got a common trick that you can think of off the top of your head?
Oh well, I mean, but basically, it's there's some interesting ones.
Okay.
You find sometimes buyers will simply not return your call. They're going to judge. They're going to wait. They're going to sit back and wait. I mean, I always turn around and say to people. And somebody I know who you've had on a podcast before here, Marcus of Fountain, you can ask him how I taught him to buy a car. Because I talk about things like the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, a BATNA, as they call it. And really what that means is if you can't reach an agreement, if you can't get to the point whereby you can agree a price on something, what's your alternative? Yeah. So if you're looking for a new office and you can't get the rent the way that you could afford it, you have to have an alternative if you've got to find a space for your people.
And I guess walking away could be an alternative, but then you've got to find somewhere else, right?
Exactly. So work out what your best alternative to a negotiated agreement is first of all. Knowing that will then start to lead you to what you can agree with, because biggest strength you have when you're buying anything is the ability to turn around and walk out the door. Yeah. And I'd always say to people, if you're buying a car, recognise there's a point at which you won't pay any more money.
Yeah.
Don't let them convince you with anything else. And turn around and walk out the door and watch how quickly they come running after you.
Yeah. You hold the cards, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I wish we had this conversation last Sunday.
Well, there you go.
The ship sailed.
Yeah. Well, I'm just in the middle of doing that myself at the moment. But, mate, I'm hoping the guy I'm buying from isn't going to be looking at this.
We won't launch for a few weeks.
But I mean, that's way away from it. But if you bring that back again to when you're selling a business, we had lots of offers for our business. I mean, when I say lots, probably 5 or 6 companies came knocking on our door, all of whom we felt were valuing us way below what the market was.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, it's tempting. You sit there and you say, well, it's 25 million between a few of us. That's still quite a lot of money.
Would be quite nice.
That would be quite nice. We could take that now and not worry about that too much.
Yeah.
But we knew that we were worth more. Yeah.
I mean, what a mindset to have, to actually almost be able to play hardball and go, no, we're not budging. Like, we're sitting.
Well, the nice thing as well is, remember, if you're enjoying what you're doing and you're making money out of your business, and why I say get your business right, get it doing the things it needs to do.
Yeah.
And for me, a business has to generate positive cash and profit.
Yeah.
Now, okay, that isn't the way it works on the west coast of America in the venture capital markets at the moment, where growth is the key for everything. But I think that's massive businesses, and quite frankly, the people investing in them are gambling and punting, because you can't make a lot of money by putting your money in the bank now.
Yeah.
Know your worth, right?
You've got to go and speculate a bit. But really, coming back to that point, you have to recognise the fact that you're enjoying running your business. And always, if you ask me the question, when should you sell your business? I would say you sell it at the time when you're enjoying running it most, quite frankly.
Or almost at the top. So
Well,
I always take it back to sports, right? When do you leave as a football manager or whatever? You leave once you've won the league, not...
If you can do that, that's great.
Yeah.
And that would be the ideal. But in reality, your best alternative to that negotiated agreement is, well, I'm going to carry on running my business.
And that's your equivalent of walking away, right?
Yeah,
Saying,
exactly.
You've given me 10 mil. No. Okay, no
But
problem.
it is having that strength and that knowledge and being absolutely unemotional about it. Because it's very hard not to be emotional, but you have to force yourself to not be emotional.
And at the start of that journey, did you already have the figure in mind? We talked about exit strategy earlier. Did you already know, I will budge for no less than X? Or that wasn't part of your exit strategy?
Personally, there was one of me that said, I want to make at least X out of this business.
Okay.
But we were starting a business that was pretty new. I mean, we basically had to grow the whole sector. It wasn't a sector which existed. We spent our lives sharing knowledge and becoming the knowledge leaders in the field.
Sure.
And we did that, and that's a whole separate podcast really about growth and how you really do build a company. But what's available in the market. You can look around and see what the keys are. Does this business or do the values in this business in this area work on EBITDA, or are they looking at revenue? Is it multiples of revenue or what? So you get a pretty good idea, and you see other deals that are happening. But you do have to make a decision. You have to say, when is this enough, and when should I just turn around and say no? And of course, during our negotiations, we said no several times to the people we eventually sold to.
Did you tell the others that there were others in the mix?
Sometimes we did.
Okay.
But the one thing we always did is we never lied.
Yeah.
I mean, the temptation is to turn around and say, oh, well, there's somebody else interested. Well, something else? Most industries are small enough that
they'll
they
talk.
know. Yeah. I always say, and that comes back to the buying and selling thing as well. Don't lie that you've got a different offer.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get found out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you've got to carry on working in this sector in the future. So it is better to be truthful. You don't need to tell people how much you're being offered or how much they're offering.
Sure.
But, if they're wise enough and they realise you're saleable enough and you're attractive enough, the guys buying you are going to know there are other people interested.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You can. I mean, I always say to people as well, if somebody comes along with what looks like a good offer, or they look like they're going to be sensible, sure, try and generate some competition.
Yeah.
But by the same token, the other thing you have to realise is that very rarely when you sell a business are you going to be walking away from that business straight away.
Well, normally you're on an earn out, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you want to be actually selling to people that you like, that have a similar culture, that you think you can work with. Because if you don't, you've got a year, 3 years of absolute misery.
So in
And
your
that means you're
situation,
probably not going to achieve it.
did you have to go through the earn out process? Or?
Yeah. Basically,
How long was that process?
It's a 3 year, or ours was a 3 year process.
Okay.
I actually did 18 months, and the way the deals were structured were that some of the money was put together in shares in the company that was buying us.
Okay.
And truthfully, I think there's probably one role inside a business that is the most difficult one, and that was the one I had, which was CEO. Because quite frankly, once you've been a CEO, you want to run businesses.
Yeah.
So it's quite hard to go back and work for somebody else.
Yeah.
Number one. The thing I enjoyed about the 18 months I did working with Cooper is we had some new initiatives that I was working with. We integrated the people very successfully in the end, and we integrated the software. And after that point, I was kind of, what do I do now? Yeah. And the CEOs tend to be the ones who really, I think you have to say, it's time for you to go.
Yeah.
And I didn't trigger, Cooper didn't trigger it with me. It was me who turned around and said, no, actually, I want to go and do something else. I'm going to retire.
You ran your course, yeah.
So what I did is I retired knowing that I would just be doing NED roles with other people.
Okay.
So, yeah, I left some money on the table, but that's a personal thing.
Sure.
There are other guys who are in there, doing their full earn out because they're enjoying the roles, enjoying the jobs they've got.
Yeah.
But, yeah, recognise the fact that it's not just about the money. You need to make it work. And if you get locked into an earn out and you're unhappy doing what you're doing, and you haven't been quite honest about the opportunity for this business, you're not going to get the full value of the earn out anyway.
Sure.
So don't be dumb.
Yeah.
It isn't just
play by
about
the
the
book.
money. It's about all those things that come together.
Absolutely. And what would you do differently if you could go back? Because I guess it's all, hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? And saying, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that. What would you have done differently?
Not a damn thing.
Really?
No. My view of this is, hindsight is a perfect science.
Yeah.
It's more than marketing. It's a perfect science. And I like marketeers, by the way. So
You wait to tag in, Marcus.
Yeah. And one of the companies I'm an NED with is a marketing company that is fabulous to do. And it sounds very arrogant to say absolutely nothing, but equally well, you can't have regrets. Yeah. I mean, the fact is, we were in a marketplace where there were probably only 4 or 5 of our companies. Yeah. So we were all going to get bought eventually. Yeah. And the trick, I guess, is to be the last princess at the party. Yeah. Because you tend to be the one who's worth more money. Yeah. And sure, there are companies who we thought were lesser than us, who've now been bought by other people for more money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And the hindsight would say, oh, we should have held out. But you know something? Enough is enough. Yeah. And the time is right. And you can't go back and regret. You can't change these things back. Yeah. So why worry? Yeah.
You could be there. You could be in that business till you're 90 if you're holding out for all these years.
And truthfully, you would have carried on running it till we were probably 80 and enjoyed doing it. Yeah. And that was the beauty of it. And that was why we were in such a good position that we were going into a company that suited us with good people. And Cooper themselves are on a massive trend now. They're growing like crazy. Yeah. And they've gone from a 2 billion market cap company to a 10 billion market cap company in the space of a few years. So they know how to grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they've done some great acquisitions.
And so we've focused today talking most about exit and almost this end of the journey. Let's go back to the other end of the journey. I know we said we'd almost jump on another podcast to talk about business growth and the principles, but for anyone listening or watching, what are the core things that you need to get in place right at the start to make sure that when you're all the way at exit, you've got it all in place?
Most important thing are clients. Yeah. Yeah. And it
I
really
mean, sounds logical, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually not.
But it's true. I mean, the fact is you have to have something, a service or a product that is saleable. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't mean the business, but you've got to make stuff that people want. Yeah. You've got to have a service that people want, and you've got to delight the client. The companies that do best are the ones who got stellar customer service. Yeah. You've got to be easy to deal with. Yeah. You've got to be the customer of. You've got to be the supplier or customer of choice. Yeah. That's the reality of it. We all know of companies we work with where you say, I'm never working with them again.
Oh, absolutely. So a product or service that serves or solves a problem.
Yep.
And then customer service that's unrivaled. That means that every time they need to solve that problem, they don't bat an eyelid and come straight back to you.
You need, ideally, you want to be the Hoover of the vacuuming world. I'm old enough to remember that. Yeah. But I spent my life never ever turning around to people and saying I was vacuuming. I was hoovering.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can get to that, that's fabulous. I come out of a corporate culture in Mars where they have some of the best brands in the world. You go into a confectioner's and you watch people look down the list and they go, oh, I'll have a Mars bar. Yeah. Yeah. And the real trick is they have absolute consistency in the product. Every single time that product's as good as it was the last time. Yeah. Yeah. So, it is customer service. It is customers. It's about getting the right people. But also, depending upon where you are, if you're a new business, you've got to actually teach people that you're a service that people need. Yeah. Yeah. You've actually got to become the knowledge leaders. You've got to be the people that the world flocks to. Sure. Yeah.
And doing that through content or through training or
it's all those things. Yeah. I mean, and again, it depends. If you're a consumer business, there's very little substitute for advertising and good products. Sure. Yeah. I mean, you've got to tell people you're there. Yeah. And there are so many channels nowadays, as you guys know, to do that. And you have to be a master of all of them. And you have to be appropriate because you can still waste an awful lot of money.
Absolutely right.
If you're a business-to-business company, then you really do need to be there giving people value and very often giving it away. I mean, I always laugh at the time where, people, if they're in a business-to-business environment, I smile a lot when I see something on LinkedIn and people say, oh, get a copy of our latest report. And you click on it and then you're asked to fill in a form. Yeah. Yeah? Well, guess what? I don't want that report that bad because I know what you're going to do afterwards. Yeah,
bombard me.
You're going to bombard me with all sorts of clever stuff, some of it automated and some of it not automated. Yeah. And then you're going to ring me and you know something? I'm going to be the one who decides when I want your product. Yeah. And if I want your product. Yeah. And funnily enough, if you gave me that report for free without trying to get my details and I was really interested in you, I think I know where your website is and I think I know how to get hold of you. Yeah. Yeah. Now, you think about it from a very, very simple point of view. If somebody actually rings you and says, I'm interested in your product, would you like to come and talk to me? There's a much better chance they might buy it from you than, oh, God, here he comes again. Look, he's on day 10 of his cold calling approach. Yeah. So, I think the real trick is if you want to be a knowledge leader, you have to prove to be a knowledge leader. Yeah. Go out there and give this stuff away. Yeah, and don't worry about the fact that your competitors might learn something from it as well. Yeah. Yeah. Because hopefully they'll spend money. Yeah. They'll do similar things and they'll help you grow the market. Yeah. Competition's a good thing. Yeah. Yeah. Just be good at what you do. Out-market, out-manufacture and out-service your competition. Don't hide from it. Go and address it. Go and do something about it. So, it's those things that are the keys in my mind to growth. It's about knowing your audience, targeting them effectively, giving stuff away where it's appropriate. Yeah.
Without giving away everything. Because, again, of course, some people fall in that trap of almost not having a business, right? Because they just give everything away.
Well, again, coming back to my days as a buyer, I used to love it when people would turn around to me and say it was free because I knew if it was free, it wasn't worth anything. Yeah. That's the thing. If you give stuff away, it's the concept is, it's worth nothing. Sure. But the real trick is if you give stuff away that is valuable and is useful to people, they'll come and find you. It's easy to find the company now. Yeah. Your trail is all over the place.
Exactly right. So almost pay it forwards and it will come.
Yeah. And the real trick then, when you're trying to sell something to somebody, I mean, certainly in the business of software, the old rules haven't changed at all. You've got to find out who really makes the decision. And very often in bigger businesses, the decision is a corporate or a collegiate one now. Yeah. There are 5, 10, 15 stakeholders, all of whom have to tick the box and say yes if they're going to buy your software or your service or whatever. And the real trick, I mean, I used to see it at times where people saying, oh yeah, they're going to buy. And it comes to contract stages, and you find out the person you've been talking to all the time actually can't buy without two other people above
Not the
him
decision
or her.
maker. We've all made that mistake, haven't we?
And, but that's the key. And I always say to people, you need to get to the decision maker early.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with turning around to somebody and saying, is this really your decision or is it somebody else? Because if it's somebody else and you're engaged with me and you want to buy, then let's actually go together to them.
Yeah.
Turn that person into an advocate inside the business and give them the ammunition to be an advocate. Because most of the time, they're going to be selling for you. You know, most of the selling's done when you're not there, quite frankly.
Yeah.
You know. So that's another really important thing about growth.
That is that time has flown by. And
so much value.
For hours and hours and hours, and I look forward to catching up for lunch soon. But thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I hope you all watching and listening have got great value for that. I'm just sapping it all up like a sponge.
I was absorbed the whole time.
Awesome. So thank you. Really appreciate it. If people want to contact you or find out more, what's the process they go through? I guess some businesses may not be quite right to work with you just yet, but if they possibly think they are and they're qualified, what is that process?
The best way, quite frankly, is I'm on LinkedIn, Garry Mansell, Garry with 2 R's because my mum couldn't spell.
My mum didn't know how to name children, apparently.
Well, there you go, clearly. Yeah, but Garry Mansell, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I mean, make sure, don't just go connect.
Yeah.
Because the odds are I probably won't.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're interested, put a message in there. If put it this way, if you can't be bothered to write a message, I probably can't be bothered to say yes. But put a message in there and say what you're interested in. Yeah. And then connect with me there. That's the easiest way.
Perfect. Gary, thanks again.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.